So when you guys are looking for a hunting property, a few things you want to be looking for, especially when you're buying a small property. You can get away with a lot when you're buying, 50 plus acres, but when you're buying 15 acres, 20 acres, 12 acres, you want to be able to maximize as much of that acreage as possible. So I'm closing this week on this property here, and it is right at 15 acres. And it sets up really cool for being such a small parcel. Probably one of the better setups that I've seen in a long time for such a small property. I've hunted, 15, 20 properties throughout Ohio over the years, and have figured out what I'm looking for in a property, and made a lot of mistakes along the way, and hopefully I can help you from, avoiding some of those mistakes when you're buying. So one of the first things you're looking for when you're buying a small property like this is access. It can be really tough to get into some of these properties without just busting out all the deer that are here. And so in a perfect world, you're able to access from the east, and that's you're walking into the wind when you're walking onto the property. This property here, the access is from the southeast corner, which is really cool because typically when I'm hunting, I'm focusing on those cold fronts, those north wind cold fronts. So now you're getting a northwest, and that's perfect access. And any kind of north blows that wind over onto the neighbors. They have just some pasture ground, nothing on it. No deer are going to be using that. And then on top of that, it has this ridge system that's on the south side that you can use to access the whole length of the property and just hop off the side to be able to access stand sites. The second thing is utilizing all of the property for habitat, and I'll show you guys back here. We actually cut this property out 3 years ago, and obviously I had no clue I was going to be buying the property later on at the time, but as luck would have it, here I am. But one of the cool parts about this, with it being logged out, and it was logged out pretty hard. I mean, the landowner cut it pretty hard, and what that allows for is some serious thick cover to be growing. And you can see, this stuff is head height through here. I'm actually probably going to have to go through and open some paths out to be able to let the deer get through it a little easier. But there is just deer sign all over this property. And another aspect that I like, back to the access end of things, is that it's got a right-of-way coming into the property. Some guys might look at that as being a negative, but on such a small property, I don't want my truck to be actually parked right on the property. It's really tough to be able to park your truck on 15 acres and the whole, all the deer on that property not know you're there. Whereas with a right-of-way, I'm able to park way in the front, walk in on that right-of-way, and then have the whole 15 acres. So, also looking for a property that has some options for food plots. If there is zero option for food plots, it's a tough buy for me, but I want as much of the property to be wooded and with cover as possible. And this entire property is wooded, minus the fact that there's probably a 1-2 acre old field that's really, really thick. They're really using it for bedding area right now, but I'm able to cut out of that, probably a half-acre little clover plot, sort of my plan with that, and going to be adding a a blind that, you know, able to get in there and hunt that. But then, you know, the fact that the rest of this property is thick, it's got cover, the deer feel comfortable moving through it. I had, you know, a property that was 40 acres and only 8 acres of that was timber. And that was probably one of the worst hunting properties that I have personally ever hunted on. And that was simply due to the fact that everything was so open. And yes, long term there's things you can do to improve that, but I definitely slant more towards starting with a good base of cover and opening things up as you need to. But having a little area as a food plot is definitely a huge bonus for this property here. So a few of the improvements we're going to be doing to this property is I'm going to have a one main kind of up along the rim of this thing, a one main trail kind of going the length of the property, not quite. I'll throw up a aerial map of this to kind of show you what I'm talking about, but a kind of like a feeding corridor. Essentially it's just rye is what I'm planning to plant in that, and that takes pretty well anywhere. And I figured out it works really well for routing deer. And you know, you can have a couple stand locations based off of that. Then down here more in this bowl, there's kind of these open spots where it was old logging trails, but some of these areas were cleared a little wider and stuff. That I plan on planting into switchgrass, and that just kind of complements the cover in here. And what I like about the switchgrass is it allows for the deer to be able to move through it. Yeah, it creates cover and stuff, but some of this stuff is so thick and full of tops, it's difficult to actually have the deer move through that, whereas switch can create some cover and some security, but they can easily move through that. The third thing to be looking for if you're buying a small property like this is where it's located. You know, pull up an aerial map and actually look at, is there something that makes this 15 acres special? And there's, for example, I looked at 40 acres the other day, and you pulled it up on an aerial and there was nothing for topography or in relation to, you know, ag or food. There's just nothing there that really seemed to funnel deer through that property. And not saying there's nothing you could do to improve that. I mean, there's a lot you can do on 40 acres. But when I'm looking at 15 acres, I want something that there's a reason the deer are there. I owned 12 acres a while back, and that had a good river system running through it. And what was cool about that was during the rut, these bucks would run this river bottom consistently, checking for does. And that created a ton of movement and pinch points and funnels. And that property actually hunted really well considering it was only 12 acres. This 15 acres specifically has, if you'll notice, there's two big chunks of woods, one to the south and one to the north, each about 100 acres. And this property sits kind of in the center of that. And then on top of that, on the back end, there's this pretty major drop off. It's pretty steep. And then there's a field that pushes up against that, and it creates a pretty major pinch point. And I was able to see that just on the aerial and then confirm it by basically the highway of deer traffic that was using that. They do definitely cross through the field more than I anticipated by the looks of it. So I'm gonna have to kind of block some of that off with some hinge cuts and stuff, just making it less easy for them to use that and pinch them down even more. But the other nice part about this is that this property stages off of this big field to the north of me, and the neighbors there, they have, you know, big corn feeder out in the center of this thing with a big blind and stuff. And I knew a lot of that movement's gonna be nocturnal, which is gonna push these deer back onto my property. It's where they're gonna want to be bedding and staging for that nighttime food source. If I can use, you know, a little half-acre clover plot to kind of sweeten the deal, I think the deer are going to use this quite a bit. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm super excited about this little property. Gonna be doing some work here in the next few weeks and months, and I'll make some videos kind of showing the process of what I do to this property. And one of my younger brothers has yet to kill a buck, and so I found a pretty good shed on this property soon after I walked it, and it's probably a deer that we'll be chasing this fall. And so I'm gonna try and get my brother to get on that deer, and hopefully we can get his first buck taken off this property. And so we'll definitely be documenting that as we go through that process. So if you want to tag along, hit the subscribe button. If you hit the like button, I'd appreciate it. And I will be putting a playlist together of this property and the journey of trying to get my brother his first buck. So thanks for watching. See y'all next time.